So I'm going to start hit it heavy. When I look around and see what's happening in this country and in this world, I can't help but observe we're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads as a collective consciousness. We're at a crossroads as an individual consciousness. There's hate and nastiness coming from all directions, especially on social media, print media, cable media. No matter where it's coming from, it's coming at us from all directions. But there's also incredible love, peace, and compassion happening everywhere, all the time. The question is, what are we giving our attention to? What are we focusing on? It's difficult because we're being so bombarded. But as we know in Unity teachings, the third principle, where our attention goes, energy flows. So what we're looking at, what we're paying attention to, that's what we're going to experience. So if you turn on whatever it is you turn on and flip on or flip through, and you look at that and you allow that to come in and fester, you're going to experience a really nasty world. But if you choose to look at incredible stuff, like the woman that went in to try to save that little koala in the fires. An incredible story of compassion. Yes, our media sources may not focus as heavy on those things as we want to, but if you look for them, you'll find them. So we're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads of both a collective and an individual consciousness. We have a choice. So speaking of crossroads, there's a story about 3 men who passed away. They're standing at the pearly gates waiting to get into heaven. And the angel comes up with a clipboard and asks them all the same question. And the question is, were you faithful to your spouse? The first man answers, yes, I was faithful, but I did cheat a couple of times. The angel looked at the clipboard and said, wow, he's telling the truth. Come on in, and you're going to be driving a Toyota Corolla. The second man answers the question, yes, I was faithful, but I did go to the clubs a few times. Angel looks at the clipboard and says, tell him the truth. Come on in. You're going to be driving a caddy. The third man comes up. Angel asks the same question. He says, I've always been faithful. I've never cheated. I've never been to clubs. I don't even look around. Angel looks, wow, this one's amazing. Come on in. You're going to be driving a Bentley. So a few days later, they're driving around, and the 3 come to a crossroads, and they see each other. And the man driving the Toyota and the one driving the Cadillac look at the one driving the Bentley. He looks really depressed and down. And they look and say, what's wrong? He goes, I'm so grateful to be in heaven, and I'm so grateful to be driving this Bentley. They said, so what's wrong? I just passed my wife, and she's driving a scooter. Okay, that went over dead. Okay, just want to make sure you're awake. Maybe not. And that actually has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about today. I tried. And the reason I wanted to open it up a little bit light, because we're going to be talking about something that I hope, or my intention is to create a reaction of reflection later. That's my hope, that's my intention, as we're looking at this thing of 10 to 2 to 1. We are in this season of gratitude, moving from gratitude of Thanksgiving, and for 4 weeks, moving into this Christmas season. And Unity, we understand the metaphysics of Christmas being the birth of a new consciousness, the birth of a new realization or a spiritual awakening within us to be able to live a different and hopefully better life. So this 10 to 2 to 1, what is this thing I'm talking about? Well, we're talking about the 10 commandments. We're talking about the 2 commandments, and we're going to talk about oneness. And so we're looking at the biblical text over time, and we're looking at the evolution of human consciousness and how it takes place. This is how Unity understands the entire biblical text. So it's not only the collective human consciousness over time, but it's also the individual expression and consciousness and evolution of consciousness. So we've got 10 commandments being expressed and given to Moses. These are kind of like training wheels. You do it right and you won't fall down. Then, about 1,000 years later, we have this character, Jesus, that comes along. He says, no. It's only 2. Love God, love people. And now, we no longer need training wheels. We're on that bike doing wheelies for miles without hands on the handlebar. Ultimately, as we look into Revelation, we move into oneness, where we don't need a bicycle or any transportation because we done arrived. And this is the evolution that we're talking about. So when we look at these 10 commandments, we have to throw a little metaphysics in here. We are in a unity church, so I'm going to give that story to you. When we look at how these 10 commandments came about, we're looking at the Old Testament, we're looking at the Exodus story, and how Moses helped bring the people out of bondage in Egypt, wandering around the desert for 40 years, camping at the base of Mount Sinai. Moses goes up the mountain amidst storms and clouds and lightning. He meets the great I Am, he meets God, God gives him the 10 commandments, he brings them down to give them to the people. That's the basic story, right? Metaphysically, in unity, we gotta do it. We're in a unity church. So let's look at this. What does each of these things I mentioned represent metaphysically, as determined by Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity movement? So we look at the first one. The Hebrews, the people. They represent thoughts, the different ideas and thoughts within ourselves. We look at Moses. Moses is that aspect within us that's trying to pull us to a higher understanding of life, higher understanding of creation. We look at how do we get that out of Moses? Well, Moses was drawn out of the water as a baby. Moses drew people, the Hebrews, out of Egypt. He draws them closer to God, a greater understanding of God. So it's this idea of drawing forth. The clouds, the lightning, all represent the chaos that happens when we're going through this transformation process in unity we call chemicalization. The mountain always represents a higher consciousness. So as we look at this story from a quick metaphysical one-sentence blurb, it's basically saying that aspect within us is calling us forth to a higher consciousness, even through the chaos, to receive a new and better way of living. Pretty simple, huh? Pretty simple stuff. But what I'd like to do is step into understanding these commandments. So, if you could put the graphic, the next one, I think, there's the 10 commandments, as received by Moses and given to the people. So if we look at those 10, the first 4, don't worship any other gods, don't make any idols, don't misuse the name of God, and keep the Sabbath holy. And the next 6, honor your father and mother, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie, don't covet. Now this should give you a really solid hint of from 10 to 2, the left side being about God, the right side being about man. Love God, love people. Bottom line in the statement. But we want to dive a little bit deeper into these things and explore them. So when we look at the first one, don't worship any other gods. Well, this has a very solid practical aspect for us. It's basically telling us that this is, okay, we're in unity, I know, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is the anti-prosperity commandment. What? The anti-prosperity commandment. What it's basically saying is God comes first. In unity we talk about prosperity, but if you really look at the teaching, it's about seeking first the kingdom. Everything else is going to be added. So you don't have to focus on the things, they'll come along. Focus on light, focus on love, focus on peace. But the bigger question in this statement, don't worship any other gods. What is God? Anybody got a thought on that? What is God? Well, the one thing I would suggest to you is don't let anybody tell you what God is. I believe we each need to understand that, because if other people begin to tell us what God is and how to worship God, somebody else is telling us that, we're in trouble, because millions and millions and millions of people have been murdered, maimed, and killed over somebody else telling them how to know and understand God. So this is an individual thing. You've got to develop and know and understand what that God concept is for you. I will share with you what my idea of God is and my understanding. For me, God is agape love. Period. End of statement. Agape love, what does that mean? It means it is this creative thought and energy that continues to pour forth and continues to pour forth and continues to pour forth forgiveness, compassion, love. No matter what's happening, it just keeps going. Look, there's a better way. Look, it's here. It's happening. Hey, dummy, wake up. I'm here. Love is here. Always pouring out without retribution and without judgment. That's God for me. I'm not telling you that should be God for you, but I think we need to understand what that is, because it has an important perspective on these 10 things, especially the first one. Don't worship any other gods. Bottom line is, what this whole thing means is be in integrity. In other words, don't worship any other gods. What is God for me? I just explained it to you. So if I am doing, thinking, or expressing anything outside of that, I'm basically living in inner hypocrisy. Does that make sense? It's integrity. Define, understand, know what God is, this power of the universe, whatever that is for you, and live it. Otherwise, you're being a hypocrite. Now, I'm not calling you a hypocrite, because I live it all the time, daily. Go, oh crap, did I really say that or think that? Yeah. So this whole thing is about integrity. Don't worship any other gods. If you are, then you're screwing up, because you're not in integrity with your own self-being. The second one, don't make any idols. Well, so what is an idol? Again, this is a practical application, because if we think back in ancient times when these things, when these commandments were given, we had warring factions and tribes. And so what they did is they maybe carved out a wooden idol, a wooden statue, or carved out a rock, and it was portable, so when they moved, they could carry their little god with them. And the concept coming through the Hebrews at the time was a bigger perspective of God. There's only one God. So this isn't saying it. Stop all of the carving. You're wasting your time. So most of us don't do that today. So what does this idol thing mean? Well, if we look at it, it could be money, bank accounts, cars, homes, relationships, whatever these things are. If we're making idols out of them, we're putting those before the power of the Creator as we understand it. If we do that, things may not go so good. So again, it's about integrity. It's about understanding that integrity. But there's one other idol I'd like to throw out there. I hear it all the time. I hear it in Unity. I hear it at home. I hear it with relatives. I hear it with friends. I even hear it with the University of Miami football, which is, oh, the good old days. The good old days. This can become a very, very powerful idol. Let me tell you, folks, you can't go back. Life changes and evolves. It keeps moving. The question is, are you going to be in flow and in sync with that evolution and that process, or are you going to resist it? See, if we step into the flow, if we step into the river, the flow of hope and peace, and move with it, that's what we're going to experience. But the minute we step into that river, try to stop the water, and we resist it, we're going to end up in a life of strife and misery, because we're not in the flow. The good old days are gone. Step into life in the flow that is now. That's a really powerful idol for me, especially hurricane football. So again, it's about integrity. It's really about integrity. The third one, do not misuse the name of God. Folks, this ain't about cursing. That has nothing to do with this. As much as you were taught when you were a kid, this has nothing to do with cursing. The first question is defining this idea of name. What is a name? A name is really a label that we give something that has meaning. So by stepping into integrity, when we look at the first one and the second one, and I step into that integrity of living out that expression and that understanding of God, when I'm in that flow, when I'm coming into that awareness, or hopefully can stay in that awareness for more than 3 minutes, I can't misuse the name of God because I'm expressing the energy behind the label. Does that make sense? Did I throw you for a loop? Are you awake? Okay. All right. Told you we were going to go a little bit heavy, right? This is the not such a feel-good sermon, is it? Yeah. The name of God, don't misuse it. You can't. If you're in integrity with the first one, and you're not putting idols in front of what your understanding of that God is, and you're in flow, and you're in the integrity, you can't misuse it, because you can't express anything but that. So misusing the name of God is really stepping out of the integrity. The last one, on the left side. Keep the Sabbath holy. What does that mean? Does that mean make sure Sunday you go to church? Keep the Sabbath holy. Well, the first thing to tell you is the Sabbath is actually Saturday. Christianity came along and took the first day of the week as the Sabbath, which is not really the Sabbath. It's confusing, isn't it? And the ancient times when these commandments were given, what I will tell you is the people of the ancient times, they didn't work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. They worked till they dropped. And so this comes along really as an aspect of supporting people, to giving them a time of rest. And then what happens is religion comes along, wraps it up, and twists it such that now the Sabbath is just another day. I've got to do something. Now, my goodness, now I got to worship God. I can't do this. I can't draw milk. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. All on the Sabbath. Oh my goodness, it's making me tired just thinking about what I can and can't do. Then about 1,000 years later, Jesus comes along. He says, you missed the point. You got it backwards. Man isn't made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath is made for man. It's the day of rest. But when we interpret this through the eyes and the realization of new thought, what we begin to understand that is we are in integrity and understanding with that God of our being, of knowing who that is and what that represents and how that is expressing, and I'm not putting anything in front of it, and I'm living that awareness as much as possible, then the Sabbath is always with me, because there is no tiresome aspect. We are in the flow, and when we're in the flow, everything happens easy. So the Sabbath happens easy. Is this making any sense? Yes. So the first 4 are about God, ultimately about integrity with yourself. But it takes some reflection within each of us. Now, what I wanted to do is get through all 10 of them today. That ain't going to happen. Unless we're going to have lunch ordered in. No? Okay. So it ain't going to happen. So next week, we'll talk about the next 6. So today we got through the God side. Next week we get through the man side. And ultimately realize there ain't a difference. There's not a difference. So what I'm hoping today and next week is to present ideas and thoughts for you to take back with you over the next 3 or 4 weeks through this season of transformation. And the 2 big points from today is to take a look at asking yourself, what is God? What is God for me? And the second one is, am I putting anything above that concept within myself? I do it all the time. I screw up. Well, I was going to say daily, hourly. But the cool thing is when you become aware of it, you can shift right back and say, whew, screwed that up. Let me get back in the flow. We're at a crossroads of collective consciousness. Where are we going to move as a human species? And where am I going to move in my individual consciousness and understanding and awareness of life, love, peace, and God? For me, it's a new understanding of the Advent season. A time for reflection, a time for awareness, a time for introspection, and a time for expression. Let's pray. O Spirit of truth, God of our being, light in the world, hope in the universe, peace in the world. We open our hearts and minds to your presence, to your power, and to your love. And it's my prayer that not only I continue to reflect, but each person in this room begins to reflect and understand a concept of who or what you are. And begin to step into the awareness that in truth, as both Peter and Paul said, God is love. And as that awareness grows within myself and each person in here, the awareness becomes the foremost thought to shift into a full expression of that light and that love. We're grateful. We're humbled. We're excited. We're looking so forward to Christmas. Thank you, sweet Spirit. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your awareness. Thank you for your imagination. Thank you for your hope and your peace. And so we claim this together in the name and the nature, through the power of the universe that is in full expression. And so it is. Amen.